So we're learning what is being said to understand every mas'ala to the best of our ability, inshallah ta'ala, to understand it. And the issues that that people have in the contracts and things like this that we face nowadays, don't try to link it yet. We're not going to, this is not the subject here. So the questions should be at the end, inshallah, as far as the session is concerned, is what is being said. Not too many of the examples of what's present today. This can be in the different sessions of contemporary issues and things like this. But the purpose here is that we learn not the rulings of what's happening, but to learn the foundation of the ilm, the roots of it, where it's coming from, where things are coming from, to comprehend that, so that later on, then when we discuss a matter and see what the ulama said about it, and we would appreciate the ilm of how the ulama, they're not just looking at things and saying things according to what they think, but it's bringing things back to the roots of it, or to the foundations of it, and seeing every transaction. And this is one of the easy matters when it comes to the contracts and transactions. Every aqd, every contract, it has to be defined first. What is the name of it? What is this? What is the deal? What is the nature of this muawada or something else that is between two parties? What is it called? According to the deen, not according to what the people they call it. They might call it something. They might call it buying when it's lending or something else. So when a person reads a contract, a person of knowledge, for example, he would be able to see and identify that what is this? What is basically the nature of this deal between two parties? And according to what is it called, then there are rulings. There are rulings when it comes to buying and selling. There are rulings when it comes to ijara, renting or hiring, or qard or lending, or whatever there is. So that's why it's very important to have the proper tasawwur, or the proper perception, understanding exactly what is the nature of the dealings between people, right? Instead of jumping into what's happening and is it halal haram. You understand my point here? So this is what we need to do, inshallah, especially that the book doesn't have all the different masail and even the different contracts and things like this. We might add some things to it, inshallah ta'ala. So hopefully this can be clear, inshallah ta'ala. So we talked about the definition of al-bay' linguistically and religiously, and how that it's aqd mu'awada, and the word mu'awada, that means someone is gaining, someone is giving, and someone is taking. It's not a gift. Gift or hiba is something else that is going to be mentioned later. And the word maliya is there, that means of value, that has a monetary value, and it's to own something. This is how you purchase something, you own it. You own something specific, or manfa' or benefit. You can own a benefit. Ala ta'bid, forever. This is what the definition of buying and selling is. You cannot sell something for a month. That's not selling something. Right? This is something else. When you sell something, that means you give it away forever, unless you purchase it again. Ala ta'bid. La ala wajh al-qurba, not as a way of seeking rewards from Allah. Because when you buy and sell, that means you're giving something in return, you're getting something, money. Yes, you can seek rewards from Allah so that you seek halal and things. This is not what is meant here. It's meant about the transaction to make it away from the sadaqah, for example. When you give someone charity, this is a form of transaction. You're giving something, but you're giving it as a charity, as a good deed. But buying and selling, that means you are buying and someone is selling, and vice versa. So we talked about that yesterday, and the rule of it is that everything in matters of transactions or buying and selling, the rule is everything is halal, unless proven that it's haram from the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, which it makes it easy. How is that? When someone says, or people invented a way of buying and selling, should they bring an evidence that this is halal? No. The evidence should be, what is the evidence that it's haram? And that's a major difference, right? Because everything is permissible unless proven otherwise. So you have to prove that it's wrong. It's not that you have to prove that it's right, which is opposite to the ibadat. The ibadat, salah, dhikr, and so on, everything is haram. You cannot make your own ibadah unless you have an evidence that the Prophet ﷺ did it. So this is a major difference between the ibadat and the muamalat. And you see, this is one of the signs of Allah. How perfect is the deen of Allah. So it's not permissible for someone to initiate a way of dhikr, or ibadah or anything like that. No, you have to stop and wait to see what the Prophet ﷺ did, and then you do it. Buying and selling, you don't have to stop and wait and see only the ways that they used to do things. No, people can invent all kinds of ways as long as it abides by the principles and the rules of the Sharia. And we talked about the pillars, the sigha, the content of the contract, so the dealing between two parties, and the two al-muta'aqidain, the two end of the contract or buying and selling, and mahil al-aqd, which is basically the price of it and the money or things of that nature. And we talked about the conditions, the 7 conditions, and these 7 conditions is shurut al-bay', shurut sihhat al-bay', the conditions for al-bay' to be valid. And these conditions are from the Shara, from the Deen. Because the next subject, some people, they get confused between the next subject and the one that we just finished, which is the conditions of al-bay', because it's also conditions. But it's a shurut fil bay'. This is what we're supposed to do tonight, inshallah, briefly, inshallah. A shurut fil bay'. This is where we stopped. If you see it, what's the title in English? Stipulations in the contract, right? But the word and the previous title was what? What shurut sihhat al-bay'? The conditions for a sound business transaction. So it's good, and that's why the word stipulation gives that meaning. But in the Arabic language, they're both shurut. They're both conditions. But the first one, the 7 conditions that we mentioned yesterday or the day before, is the conditions of the transaction or buying and selling to be valid. And that's to be known from the Shara, from the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. The shurut fil bay', the conditions in the contract or the stipulations, that means this is something else. This is something that people would want to have a condition in their contract. You know, what is the ruling of this? Can I have whatever condition I want in a buying and selling contract? What is permissible, what's not permissible? And this is a huge subject, of course, because people, they might want to have something as an extra condition. What are the 7 conditions first, which is conditions of the contract or the validity of any contract of buying and selling? It has to be in every contract. Contract is, briefly, just because we went through them before. The first one was at-taradi, that both parties have to be agreed upon when it comes to the content of the contracts. Now, no one is forced. So if someone forced someone with a gun in his head to sign a contract, and he signs it, it might be in front of the judge. He has no evidence except what's in front of him. So he might give a verdict that this is valid because he doesn't know what's behind this. But in reality, this contract is not valid. Why? Because someone was forced. So if it get to be proven, of course, it would invalidate it. So it has to be both the buyer and the seller, they agree to it. They're pleased. At-taradi, it's not necessarily pleased, but this is with agreement. They're both al-muta'aqidain. And it doesn't have to be just the buyers and the seller. They both have to be fit to do the transaction. So a child, for example, he cannot do it, or someone insane, something like this. Number 3 is that a sil'a, or the commodity that they're buying and selling, has to be permissible. So if they're selling something haram, it's not valid. Even though they buy and sell and they take money, but it's all of no validity whatsoever if it's something that is haram or something that has no benefit to it, which is something important to remember also. Anything that is of no benefit, it's not permissible to buy it or to sell it. No benefit whatsoever. So there has to be a benefit. And determining the benefit can be different from one time to the other, the norms of the people. But buying things for no benefit, it's not permissible in the deen of Allah because it's money, which is asabul haya, the core of life of the people. It depends on money. So when money is wasted on things that are of no benefit whatsoever, that wastes and it affects other things in people's life. So it has to be benefiting and it has to be not haram. And then number 4, that it has to be owned by the seller. A person cannot sell what he does not own. And also that has details to it, but this is the principle. The ownership has to be there. Or he is acting on someone's behalf. So he doesn't own it, but he's been given the authority from the owner to buy and sell, to sell something or to purchase something. Number 5, that it's al-mabi', or what the commodity or the thing that they're buying and selling it has to be known with description or with seeing it. So, and that's what, whether you have it in front of your eyes, you see it, or from a distance over the phone, over the net, things like this. Is it valid to just buy something that you don't know? As long as the description is very clear, whether you see a picture or the description is in details, and whenever you receive it, if the description is not according to what you have in your hands, then you have the khiyar. You have the choice to return it, of course. So this is the issue of having it. But to buy something that is unknown, it's not permissible, even if it's agreed upon from both parties. As we said, you have a bag or a load of truck that you don't know what's inside. And they say this load of truck and it's closed, you have no idea what's inside, for $100. It's not permissible because it's, you don't know, it's like gambling. Number 6, we want to repeat the whole thing again, inshallah, and يكون الثمن معلوما, that the price is known, not ambiguous, not if it's deferred for no limits, or no one knows exactly how much at the end they're going to pay. A person purchased a house, and at first it was for 100,000, but after he paid it off after 20 years, it was $1 million. Where does that come from? You know, the thaman, the price has to be fixed. And that's the evil thing of the riba, of course, with usury. And the last one, that al-mabi' or the thing or the commodity has to be, a person is able to hand it over. So you cannot sell fish in the water, for example. It has to be having the ability to give it or to ship it or to send it and things like this. So all of these 7 conditions, this is from the deen. It has to be there. الشروط في البيع, this is where it's wide open, and it depends on both parties. Some is for the seller, some is for the buyer. He wants to add a condition in the contract, what's valid and what's not valid. And you can have endless questions in this, or people do all kinds of things, but again, we'll stick to what's mentioned here to understand it, inshallah ta'ala. It says, الشروط في البيع قسمان, 2 types. صحيح لازم وفاسد مبطل للعقد. صحيح means it's valid, sound. لازم means binding. So it's binding. Once it's agreed upon, and with all of the 7 conditions are there before, and there's another extra condition, and we'll talk about some of the examples that are mentioned there. So if it's there and they agree and they sign, then it's a valid thing. The contract is valid, and it's lazim, it's binding. A person cannot say, no, I want to take that away, unless the other person would agree. So sahihun lazim, not just that it's sahih, it's lazim, that means it's binding. The second type, fasidun mubtilun lil'aqd. Fasid and al-fasad, that means it's not correct, corrupts the contract, it negates, invalidates the contract. And what they use for fasid mubtilun lil'aqd? Illegal and voiding the contract. So it's illegal, that means it's not permissible, and it's voiding the contract. And this issue of al-fasad and whether it's fasid or mubtil, these are 2 separate things. Because some things might be fasid, a condition might be illegal, meaning not necessarily in the legal sense of the laws of the land, but it's against the deen of Allah, it's against the shara. But the transaction is valid. So only the condition is not valid. And we will see that, inshallah ta'ala. And this is also depends on the terminologies of the people of knowledge with the madahib, for example. Does the fasad yaqtadi al-butlan wala? This is a mas'ala in the shara. Al-fasad. Al-fasad, which is when something is not according to the deen. Does it by default makes the contract void, or it doesn't? This is a huge subject. And it depends on what the condition is. But this is what I'm saying. You need to know this, that there is something called fasid and there's something called mubtil lil-aqd. So it's not permissible, or you can say it illegal, but make sure that it's not just about illegal in the legality of things and sin. You know, religious wise, it's fasid, and the other thing that it makes the contract void. It's not valid, and therefore the implications of it is not there. And this is in the simplistic way of making categories. There's other categories if you go into the details of it. فالصحيح, what is the sahih? some of the examples. كشرط تأجيل الثمن أو بعضه. Before we get into the examples, if it's something that is in the maslaha, in the benefit of the contract, benefits both sides or benefit one or the other, and it's not negating the 7 conditions that are mentioned before, and it's part of the contract, and some of it is already by default. You don't have to mention it as a condition, right? For example, do you have to have a condition in when you're purchasing a car, for example, that you give me the car? It's obvious, right? So this is an obvious, you don't have to be of a condition. But here you mentioned the example, كشرط تأجيل الثمن. You make a condition that I'm not going to give you the money now. I'm purchasing the car, but I don't have the money now. I'll purchase it. I'll own it. The buying and selling is done. The price or the money is something else, right? So the money, if it's not given right away, that means it becomes in the categories of a loan. So either I give you a down payment now or some money, and then the rest I'll give it to you later, or everything I'll bring it tomorrow. Even it doesn't have to be for payments. A person is sitting now purchasing a car, for example. I'll get you the money tomorrow. Either you do the contract tomorrow or you do the contract today. And if you do the contract buying and selling and it's done and signed and they depart from one another, then it's binding. Everything in the contract is binding. The money comes tomorrow, and you can mention in the contract the money will be tomorrow. If he doesn't bring it tomorrow, that means the contract you have the right to make it void and as if nothing happened. So the condition of having a condition that some of the money will be paid later or payments or whatever there is, as long as there's no riba and as long as there's no other haram things. But just look at this specific example for the sahih. كشرط تأجيل الثمن أو بعض. The condition of deferring the money, the price, or some of it. أو رهن أو ضمين معينين. 2 things he mentioned here. الرهن, we'll talk about the rahn inshallah. الرهن is, what's the rahn? The mortgage? Collateral, right? So, so you have a collateral that you, what is the rahn? This is a chapter by itself. And this is a good thing if people want to do that in contracts. The seller, he wants to guarantee that he'll have his money. So he wants to have whatever he's selling as a rahn. As a rahn, that means this is a collateral or something else. If you're not able to pay me the money, then I have the right to sell this collateral that you have so that I can get my money in time or whatever. This is valid. It's a valid condition because it's from the maslaha for the benefit of the seller so that he is able to sell. And this is actually things to make it easy for people. Otherwise, if a person doesn't have these types of conditions to be permissible, many people, they won't sell anything because, what if he does not get his money? So this is the rahn, right? To have something as a collateral for whatever he's selling. أو ضمين. ضمين, someone to guarantee, guarantor. Is that correct? Someone that guarantees this deal. A co-signer, for example, what they call him, right? So if you're not able to pay, someone else will pay. So this is the ضمين. This is a condition that can be there and it's valid. And it's always for people to guarantee that they get their money. So this is صحيح. So تأجيل الثمن أو رهن أو ضمين أو رهن أو ضمين, and there are other things. But he says لأن ذلك من مصلحة العقد, because this is from the benefit and it makes the عقد or the contract good and it strengthens it. That's the maslaha, makes it stronger. أو شرط صفة في المبيع أو شرط صفة في المبيع, or to have a condition of a صفة في المبيع. المبيع, we said, what is المبيع? بيع is buying and selling. It's called بيع, and you don't have to say شراء, which is purchasing. You can say البيع and that's sufficient, because if you sell something, someone is purchasing it. So this is the word البيع. البائع is the one that sells, right? المشتري is the one that purchases. المبيع is the thing that they are selling. So المبيع here, when he says أو شرط صفة, a condition in a صفة, characteristics in the مبيع. A person has a condition in the مبيع that he wants to attain or to have. For example, he purchased the car in a different state. And he says, a condition, you bring me the car to my house. Then it's a valid condition. So this is something with the mabi'. And the subject of can you have more than one shart or not, this is a mas'ala. Is it only one condition or more? Because there's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that the Prophet ﷺ naha an shartayni fi bay', two conditions in the bay' or buying and selling. And the ulama have different ways of explaining it, but it's to talk about the practicality of it, even though it's not here, you can have more than one condition as long as it's valid. So I want the car to be delivered, cleaned, right? This and that, things that is going to happen to it after you purchase it. Change the oil, whatever, things like this. So this is all permissible because it's something that you would stipulate when it comes to the mabi' or the thing that you're purchasing. And what is the hadith that is asl in this? Al-Muslimuna ala shurutihim. This report by Imam Ahmad and Abi Dawud. Al-Muslimun ala shurutihim. Shurut is the plural of shart. The Muslims are upon their conditions. If you agree to a condition, that means you have to, it's binding on you. And there's other hadith, إلا شرطا حل حراما أو حرم حلالا. Unless the condition makes something haram halal or something halal haram, then that condition is not valid. And it depends, there's two categories of these conditions, whether it invalidates the aqd or the aqd is valid but the condition is not valid. So this is a separate issue. But here, the shart al-sahih, shartun fil bay', shartun sahihun fil bay', a valid condition in buying and selling. And the hadith here that al-Muslimuna ala shurutihim. If you make a condition, then you have to fulfill the condition. As long as it's sahih, again, that is benefiting both parties or one, and it's not something that is haram. Or it's shart al-sifa fil mabi', as we heard, characteristics in the mabi' itself. If the condition, and he says, وَيَصِحُ أَنْ يَشْتَرِطْ, another thing, وَيَصِحُ أَنْ يَشْتَرِطَ الْبَائِعِ. It's valid, it's permissible, it's valid that al-ba'i', the seller, he would have a condition, يشترط, على المشتري, upon the buyer, منفعة ما منفعة ما باعه مدة معلوم. He can have the condition that I want to benefit from what I own. I'm selling now something, but with a condition, I want to benefit from it for a few days. I'm selling you the house, but let me stay in it for a month. The house is going to be sold today, not after a month. It's going to be sold today, but with the condition that I want to stay in it for a month because I don't have a place to go yet. So we don't have to meet again after a month. You can do that, but you can still sell it and you can stay in the house. Or, as he says, كَسُكْنَ الدَّارِ شَهْرًا مَثَلًا, like living in the house for a month, for example. Or, I'm selling my car, but let me drive it for a week. And if you agree, sure. If you don't agree, then you don't agree. So this is a condition that he wants to have. So manfa'a. So the condition here is a manfa'a, or a benefit with a specific, with very specific instructions or characteristics, not open. You cannot say, well, as it's going to be in the fasid or what's illegal or what's not valid. I'll sell you the car, but I can use it whenever I want. What's the purpose of selling it? So it has to be manfa'a ما باعه مدة معلومة, for a specific time. So this is also a valid condition. And it has to be no gharar, no deception, no jahala, ambiguity, not knowing things. Everything has to be very clear. And the subject of al-khiyar will come also. There's a specific time where people can make in the contract, or the government, for example, would apply this. Like, for example, if you purchase something, you have 14 days to return it. This is part of the contract. This is khiyar al-shart. It's mentioned in the shara. And people can make whatever conditions they want. If they want 2 days, a month, 4 days, whatever there is. So, and that's why there's rules that applies in this period. So the benefit can be beyond that, and it's still valid. So this is clear. without having any other examples. Is it clear when it comes to there's something called shartun fil bay' and it's sahih and it's valid, and the wisdom behind it that it benefits the contract. And we mentioned some of these examples here. So we need to remember these examples mentioned in the book because it's repeated in the books of fiqh. Deferring the payment, rahn, collateral, and damin, someone that a guarantor, and the hadith al-muslimuna ala shurutihim, and this is because it's for the benefit of the aqd or the contract. This is the first thing. And then shartu sifa, so whether it's in the maslaha, so for the benefit of the contract, or it's a condition that with regards to the commodity itself, to bring it, to do something to it, things of that nature. And the third one is the manfa'a or the benefit. You make a condition with a benefit. Is it clear? The second category, الشروط الفاسدة. الشروط الفاسدة. The invalid conditions. But here he says, one is فاسد يبطل العقد. There are two types of الشرط الفاسد. فاسد يبطل العقد. It's فاسد. That means it's corrupted. That means it's not permissible, and it make the عقد or the contract void. It invalidates the عقد. كاشتراط أحدهما على الآخر عقدا آخر. As someone, for example, will make a condition upon the other to be or to get indulged into another contract between one another. So I sell you the house with the condition that you give me a loan. Two contracts in one. And the Prophet ﷺ, he forbid that at all times. نهى عن بيعتين في بيع. You cannot have two contracts in one contract, or even a condition for one to the other. Or وبيع وإجارة. I'll sell you my house, but with the condition that you sell me your car. It's not exchange. They're not exchanging. It's a condition. أو صرف. Or I'll sell you the house, but to give me, and we'll sell the house fully. Transaction is done, but with the condition that I purchase euro from you, for example. صرف. With a person, sometimes these things happen. Like a person, for example, you have what do you call it? The غسيل الأموال, money laundering. Someone has a whole bunch of cash money from drugs or from whatever there is, or halal. It doesn't matter, right? But he has a whole bunch of cash money, and he doesn't have a way to get it. So he wants something else or a different currency. So he says to someone, okay, you want to sell your house? I'll purchase your house, but with the condition that you give me dollars in return of this. This is not permissible. Regardless of the legality of it, it's the issue that having a condition, another contract as a condition. Or even they used to be in the past, he would sell him this with a condition that he marries his daughter. Something like this. Anything that has a condition with another contract, whether it's buying and selling contract or any other contract, marriage contract or anything like this is fasid. It's not permissible, and it voids the first even contract. The first contract is void. So this is an example here because of the statement of the Prophet ﷺ. ومنها ما لا يبطل العقد وإنما يبطل الشرط نفسه. Other conditions, it's fasid, it's not permissible, but the contract itself, it's still valid, but the condition is not valid. He says وذلك فيما إذا شرط ألا خسارة عليه. Something that is against مقتضى العقد. There's the word مقتضى العقد. مقتضى means if there's a contract between two parties and the contract is buying and selling, as a result of that, as a normal thing that you own the thing, that means you can sell it, right? You own it, you sell it. This is a very normal, well-known thing. So if someone makes a condition that you're not allowed to sell what I'm selling to you, that means it's not a valid condition, right? So as he says here, the condition is not valid. وذلك فيما إذا شرط ألا خسارة عليه. He is purchasing a car with the intention that he's going to sell it. So he makes a condition, I'll purchase it as long as I don't lose in it. That's not a valid condition. And if the buying and selling went through and he lost, he has no rights to come back to to the original owner and it says, I lost, give me my money back. No, there's nothing there. Even if they agreed to it. Both sides, they didn't know the ruling. They said, okay, I'll sell you the car for 1,000 as long as you don't lose in it. And if you lose in it, come back and something like this. If he's lying and deceiving, that's something else. But if they both didn't know, this condition is of as if they never said anything. So this is only what becomes invalid is this condition. أو متى نفق المبيع. المبيع نفق. نفق means died, and it's a word used for animals when the animals die. The animal died, and he says, I'll purchase it as long as it lives for a couple of years or something like this. There's no such a thing. وإلا رده, and if it dies, I return it or something like this. يقول وإنما يبطل الشرط. No, وإلا رده, that means the condition is not valid, or he will have the right to return to void the contract. If it's mentioned, that means that within the period of time that he can return things and things of that nature. But here, what mentioned here, that it's one sentence. وإنما يبطل الشرط نفسه وذلك فيما إذا شرط ألا خسارة عليه أو متى نفق المبيع وإلا رده. That means the non-valid condition is the person would say, if I lose or the mabi' dies, I will return it. No, this is not a valid condition. So it's not a valid condition. Or he says, أو لا يبيعه ولا يهبه إلا إذا كان لاشتراط ذلك مصلحة خاصة فيصح الشرط. Or he won't sell and he won't give him a gift unless he would have a condition with a specific benefit فيصح الشرط, which is the first category, the first side or the first thing that we mentioned. He says, I won't sell you this thing unless I have a condition. And this condition is maslaha, is something that is valid. And this is the first point that we talked about. فيصح الشرط, the shart becomes valid. So, but here, this level, maybe we can talk about it later, inshallah ta'ala, but we need to understand there is shurut, which is, or stipulations in the contract, that it's not from the contract itself, whether it's valid, and the validity of it is for the benefit of the aqd, and it can be with some of the characteristics of al-mabi' or a benefit. And the shurut al-fasida, some of these shurut invalidates the contract, and some of it does not invalidate the contract. And the difference between both, to understand it, the one thing that is mentioned here, that it's fasid and it invalidates the contract if it's a different contract, condition with another contract. This is, at that level, we need to know that very clearly. The other types of conditions, that it's not valid or it's not permissible, but the contract is still valid. This is, as we heard here, that he would not have loss in his buying and selling. And there are many other examples when it comes to this one. And the very, very famous hadith of Barira. Barira was, she was enslaved to people, to a certain group of people. And Aisha radiallahu anha, she's the one that freed her. And as a rule, if someone frees a slave, al-wala liman a'taq. The hadith of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, al-wala, loyalty. When a slave is freed by someone, this someone has more rights to that slave than anyone else. He gave him freedom. So al-wala here means that he would inherit him after he dies. Right? So and so this is al-wala liman a'taq. And it's given to the one that frees, and this is by itself encourages people to free slaves, one of the things. So Aisha radiallahu anha, she freed Barira. But when they were doing the contract of freeing her, the owners, they said, but al-wala to us. We will accept, but al-wala is for us. That means she's freed, but she's loyal to us, meaning if she dies, we will take the inheritance. So, and the deal was done. So when the Prophet ﷺ was asked, he said, al-wala liman a'taq, and he approved the thing, and he did not approve the condition. That means they freed her on that condition, so she was freed. And who the wala belongs to? Aisha radiallahu. You see so this has implications to it, but some people, they wrongly use it. I have to go a little bit, because this is an issue that some people, when they approve the condition of the credit cards, They say there's a condition in the credit card says if you're late, you're going to pay riba. So they say the hadith of Barira. So this is a condition. You signed, yes, but it's a haram condition. As long as you don't pay the riba, if they say that you have to pay, no, I'm not going to pay because this is a fasid shart, and you would bear with the implications to it. Not like you would pay the riba. No, you would not pay anything, and your credit will be bad and so on. But you still benefited as long as you were not late. So they use this, but that's not. It's a wrong way of using the evidence, because this is, if there's a condition of haram riba clear in the contract, that is not permissible to be part of that contract. Yes, the contract might be valid, but you committed a sin agreeing on something haram. But as far as the dealing is concerned, the dealing, it's not like it does not exist. No, there's a contract exists, but with a haram condition. And you agreed that you were sinful in agreeing to a condition that is haram. You see the difference? So anyway, but this is with the shurut, and it's a huge subject, as we mentioned. And people can invent all kinds of conditions, but you can always bring it back to the very basic foundations of these conditions, whether it's for the benefit or not for the benefit of the aqd, whether it's haram, a condition haram in itself, or it's not haram. All of that is there. I don't know if it's clear or it's confusing or anything. Is it clear without thinking of the other transactions in our life? Go ahead.
Just as a the things that invalid, the conditions that are invalid but do not void contract, if those conditions are brought to one's attention prior to the contract being established, then is that still valid to go through with it, or it's only after you get to know that this was invalid?
Right. If the non-valid conditions, that it does not invalidate the contract, if it's known before the contract is done, then it's the khiyar or the choice to the one that wants to put that condition to whether to go on with the transaction or not. You know, for example, that example that is mentioned, he would sell the car he would purchase the car as long as he doesn't lose on it. So the other guy says this is not a valid condition. You know, there's no such a thing. So he says, okay, I'm not going to sell the car. That's his choice. But he says, okay, I'll sell you the car anyway. So that's clear. But if it's already done with that condition is not to be applied. And he has no rights to say we had a condition, because this condition negates the basic foundation of selling something. It's exactly as someone would say, I'm selling you the car for a month. There's no such a thing. But this is where it gets tricky. They might use a word that means selling, but he's renting. You know, is it renting or selling? So when a person says I'm selling, that means he has to abide with what selling means. He cannot say I'm selling you something, but I have the right to use it for the rest of my life. Are you selling it? And he sold it, and he take the money from it, for it. What if, and this is also is mentioned in the books of Fiqh with details, what if he, because of that invalid condition, he sold it very cheap. He sold it very cheap. So he says, okay, for example, I'll sell you the house for, it's worth $1 million. I'll sell it for 100,000, but I have with a condition that anytime I want to stay in the house, I can use it. And the person would say, sure. That guy, for example, is very old in age. So hopefully when he dies, something like this. The condition is not valid. But then if they go to the judge and they see this, then since he can do what they call it al-arsh or something like that, where he can be given because he sold it very cheap. So then things can be fixed in which the purchasing price should be higher and to remove that condition, because otherwise he lost thinking that he is having a deal. So that something can be fixed, yes. But if it's the price was normal price and things like this, this condition is not valid.
So, if that was known ahead to the Prophet, then it was not to be gone. That he basically went ahead with it because that.
Yeah. If the Prophet, if it was before that happened, go ahead and free her. They have no right to this. because it goes against the foundation of it. And they're not going to benefit from it. They already want to sell her. Something like this. Any questions here? I don't think there's anything here. Any questions?
The bad includes one is ownership, bad for ownership, and the other is the acceptable use of something.
Mm.
That use only for property, or is it use of someone's services and efforts?
بيع المنفعة, it has to be tangible, not someone's effort. Someone's effort is in the ijara. He is ijara mean that he's renting his service, or which called renting, but it's hiring. He's been hired to do a job or contracted to do a job. But the manfa'a, as we said, the clear example is that a path, a physical path in someone's yard to be used for an individual to go to the masjid, for example. So he would purchase the benefit, not purchasing the land. If we're done with what we're saying, then you can ask whatever questions, and I'm not sure if I'm gonna have the answer, but that's different than what or I mean, it's not related to what we're doing, inshallah, as long as everything is clear.
With buy, for example, the benefit of a pen. Does that mean a person would have no? It would be a limited time.
No. Yeah. No. And say, for example, if someone sold the right to walk through, and then the owner of the land wants to sell it, it's with that stipulation in it. And that person might want to purchase it back. So there's a price to it. So of course the price of the land will go down. And if he would purchase it without this manfa'a, without this benefit, the price would have been higher. So it's less because he has to purchase the manfa'a from the guy, or he approves it. Things like this. Go ahead.
That means something the beer, like you will not be allowed to, do something halal. In addition, that is the meaning of.
Right. Now, if a condition that makes what's halal haram. So someone make a condition for a halal use that he would forbid it on the person. I'm not sure I can have a valid example, but say, for example, which is again, you cannot sell it. He made something. Huh? But no, we're talking about conditions. Like if a person make a condition in the contract, make something haram when it's halal. It's halal for the person, or say, for example, this is I'm selling you my land, but you cannot eat from the trees, for example. Forbidding something that is permissible as far as a person owns something. Right. With the mabiyah. First of all, the attendance code today is clean contracts 25. Clean contracts, one word, plural, clean contracts, and then the number 25. There's a question. Can we take a question here? Oh, نعم, the hadith. Jazakallah khair. Where is the hadith? The hadith is very, mashallah, simple words, counted words. It's very easy to memorize, inshallah. Let me get the hadith first, and then we'll go through the questions quickly, inshallah. It's even said to myself, I remember the number, but I still forget the number, but I know the hadith. It's from the last section, which is the hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari of Kitab al-Tawheed. Kitab al-Tawheed in Sahih al-Bukhari, which is the last chapter, talks about the Tawheed of al-Asma' wal-Sifat, names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the proper belief in it. For some reason, did we take 168? Just like subhanallah, we didn't take it. I thought we took it, so that's why I went to the next one. But anyway, even if we didn't take it, it's okay. So it's 169. 169. You ready, inshallah? Hadith 169. عن جرير بن عبد الله
جرير بن عبد الله
قال
قال
قال رسول الله
قال رسول الله
صلى الله عليه وسلم
صلى الله عليه وسلم
لا يرحم الله
لا يرحم الله
من لا يرحم الناس.
الناس
That's it. لا يرحم الله
لا يرحم الله
من لا يرحم الناس.
لا يرحم
And the hadith has many different ways of it, but this is the narration of Bukhari, very easy, very clear. لا يرحم الله. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not have mercy upon those who do not have mercy upon people. So لا يرحم الله. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the rahmah here is attributed to Allah. That means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not bestow His mercy upon man la, the one that does not yarhamun nas, upon the one that does not have mercy upon the people. And that's a very clear hadith in the subject of al-jaza' min jins al-amal, the reward or the recompense or the punishment from the same sort of deed that a person do. So those who have no mercy to others, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has no mercy towards them. And that has many also implications, as we know. Rahmah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the human beings with having mercy towards others. And when people don't have this, as the Prophet ﷺ, when he said to the person that he said, إن لي 10 من الأولاد لم أقبل واحدة منهم, I have 10 children, I've never kissed one of them. He said, أَوَأَمْلِكُ أَنْ نَزَعَ اللَّهُ مِنْ قَلْبِكَ الرَّحْمَةِ. He says, what can I do? I don't own for you that Allah took away the mercy from your heart. You know, some people, they think this is about being tough, for example. So this is, and whether it's like in the same hadith that إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُعَذِّبْ مَنْ يُعَذِّبُ النَّاسِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will torture or will punish the one that torture people because of their evil actions. So that means that what's required of an action here, first of all, the hadith is mentioned, Sahih Bukhari in this Kitab al-Tawheed, to establish the belief in the rahmah of Allah. The rahmah of Allah is one of the attributes of Allah. It's not the thawab of Allah. It's ar-rahmah, mercy, and as an attribute to Allah. This is the way of the people of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Because the deviant ones, they alter the meaning of ar-rahmah. They say, no, it's not really rahmah, because rahmah is a weakness, because they already made tashbih. They already looked at the human beings, and they see that the mercy in the human beings is weakness. So we cannot attribute weakness to Allah. So they say, actually, it doesn't mean mercy. It means a thawab or rewards and so on. Where did you come up with all of this stuff? This is with no evidence whatsoever. The people of Ahlul Sunnah, instead, they say, we nuthbit ma athbatahu Allah azza li nafsi. We confirm what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said about Himself. And the mercy of Allah is all over the Quran. Any simple human Muslim, he would always think of the mercy of Allah and seek rewards from Allah, yes, but without denying that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most merciful. And it's not weakness to Allah, because nothing is the like of Allah. So لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ هُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْبَصِيرُ. So this is first when it comes to the matters of belief, when it comes to the attributes of Allah, to believe in this attribute of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then the implications to it, that the person should have mercy towards people. And the Prophet ﷺ said, an-nas, all people. And even with dealing with the worst of your enemies, if you deal with them according to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from you, you are abd to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And having the mercy towards everyone, as the Prophet ﷺ used to have the concern of guidance to for people to attain, and for also the physical matters, في كل كبد رطب صدقة. For everything that has a liver is a sadaqah. If you give charity for a disbeliever, for whatever, and they, this is sadaqah, this is the charity. And to be kind to the people, وَقُولُ النَّاسِ حُسْنًا, and say to people what is best and what is good, all of that is part of this. And when you see someone in pain, right, you have this rahmah in your heart, and even to the animals, it's also there. So this is part of the Muslim having the mercy towards others. And whoever doesn't have this, then he is basically subjecting himself to lose from the rahmah of Allah, that without it, people will be then treated with the justice of Allah, which is the punishment of Allah. I'm keeping you too long, but so this is the hadith. But then the questions here, let me see some questions here. First one says, and forgive me with the transaction questions, sometimes it's to understand the question in the right way and to give an answer, and then a person will take it and apply it. This is not what is intended here, because this is a huge responsibility. I might not understand the question in the right way. The person might not even understand what the contract is. He was told this, and then a person will take the answer. Oh, this is the answer. So and so said that we can buy this house. I free myself from anything of that nature, inshallah. So I'm not sure even what the question says. It says nowadays chain stores are not buying one's products if we do not pay the managers some money to place their product in their stores. If the money not given, then the product is not placed in the stores. Is it halal to pay it? To pay, if not, there is no way we can do business. That means you have to bribe the managers, or it's the store will take money, extra money to put the products in whatever priority positions that you want. I'm not sure which one. If the managers are asking for money in their pockets, which is bribery, then it means it's haram, of course, and it's not permissible whatsoever. And if it's the only way, then seek fatwa from someone. But this is the bribery and the evil things of this, which in some situations, I'm not talking about this again, when the ulama mentioned in a situation where your right will be taken away from you, unless you give someone of authority bribery, meaning, say your car, for example, your car, you own the car, and someone, policeman, for example, in some countries we will say it's going to be my car, and you're done with it unless you give me something, and you have no way to get it back. So you're gonna pay him something because it's your right. Then it's haram on him, but it's halal for you. Someone deny you also some of the basic of your rights, then this can be permissive in these situations. But you have to also think that this money that is haram that the person is receiving, you're allowing that person to bring haram to his family. So it's a very dangerous thing, of course. But for the specific person, the specific thing, then that requires a alim to give a verdict with whatever the specific situation is. Can I use the credit card in situations where no other type of payment is allowed, such as while traveling? But once we use, we make the payment the same of as soon as possible. Is it permissible? Again, when it comes to the contract, it has a haram condition in it, which is not permissible to sign a contract that has a haram condition in it. The person already has it, and whether to use it or not, Allahu A'lam. Allah knows best. Is rent to buy option permissible? As far as, again, the general rulings of rent to buy, this is not permissible contract because it's two contracts in one. Rent and buy. And this is a very obvious, clear one as an example to this. So it has to be two contracts, and then they're not depending on one another. So you rent for 2 years, and then, as some of the contemporary scholars, for example, would say, there'll be a clause there or something to say that after this is done, you might have a priority in selling it, or a promise that you would be the one that will look at you first, or something like this. But to make them both as one condition for the other, this is not permissible. I sell random products, so I do research on what is selling a lot, and I sell it, but I don't sell anything haram so far. I have sold jeans, sweaters. I have sold amino acids, pills, which is protein and good for you, and some type of juice that is good for you as well. I will sell things like a store on the street sells things. I'm not sure what's the question. Is that advertising? But I'm not sure what random products. But anyway, the product has to be halal, and some products might be halal but haram to certain individuals. Like the مسألة بيع العنب لمن يعصره خمرا. selling grapes for someone you know for sure that they're gonna squeeze it for wine. It's haram to sell the grapes to them. You don't have to interview people, but you're selling the grapes to the beer company. It's a very obvious thing. So the same thing, uh, women clothing, for example. It's permissible if a woman wear the clothing to her husband, to her maharam, but you know that she's going to wear it to everyone in the streets, and it's not permissible to sell that. So you have, things like that have to be careful. هل يجب أن يكون الرهن يماثل قيمة الدين مثلا أو ما يقاربه؟ وإذا كان ليس بالمثل هل يبقى الفارق دينا في رقبة الشخص الآخر؟ لا يجب. Does the collateral or the rahn has to be equal value? It doesn't have to, because the rahn, he made a rahn of something, and if a person is not able to pay, then the one that has the rahn, he has the right to sell it, and then if it becomes equal amount, then that's fine. If he sells it with more money, then he has to give the extra to the other side, or if it's less, then he still have to have money from him more. So it doesn't have to be. هل الصلاة على النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أثناء خطبة الجمعة تعتبر من اللغو؟ لا طبعا، وهذا من لوازم سماع اسم النبي عليه الصلاة والسلام. When someone say صلاة on the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام while خطبة الجمعة is on, if the khatib mentioned the name of the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, if a person says صلى الله عليه وسلم, this is from the lagw in the khutbah? No, of course not. It's from the virtue, from the what is must. You have to say صلى الله عليه وسلم, but you don't have to scream, and it doesn't have to be like the deviant ones where they make it, all together. 1, 2, 3. Everybody say like this. No, but every person would say it to himself. So this is part of the obligation upon the Muslim. Otherwise, a person is a greedy one, as the Prophet ﷺ said. And this is not just in the khutbah, like every time. And this is the ghafla. Sometimes we say the Prophet, you have to say, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam wa alayhi salatu wassalam. So is it permissible to sell online? Yes, as long as all the conditions of buying and selling are met. So in principle, yes, you can sell online, you can, all of that is valid as long as no haram is being sold, and as long as the conditions that we mentioned are there. No jahala, no ignorance, no ambiguity, things of that nature. But maybe we can give it more attention later, inshallah. Oh, I guess someone is saying, I think that's why they're asking the question with all of the different products. If it's as far as being sold online, that's fine, as long as it's been described and the other side knows exactly what they're purchasing, and the price is clear, the descriptions are clear, and as we said, it's halal, and it's going to be used in the halal to the best of your knowledge. So all of that is, if it's there, then it's no problem, inshallah. That's the questions here. Anything else?
Going back to the rent to buy, is this similar to a card? And at the end of your lease ends, they give you option to buy it. Is that
the lease, and then at the end you're given the option whether to purchase it or to return it. First of all, the lease contract has to be halal, no haram conditions in it. And if it's as it's mentioned like this, they give you the option, but it's not a contract. It's not binding. At the end, you're given the option. Do you want to purchase it or do you want to return it back? That's fine if it's like this. Two separate contracts, not that it's mentioned there as a condition of the contract that you have the right and you can impose that upon them.
But also, someone invents ways of avoiding that would that be considered cheating?
Inventing ways to, what do you mean?
If you say a third person, so now you have one contact, one person, that person, the other, and you have a contact with third person. It's basically two contacts. You're having three people.
Who's the buyer and who's the seller?
So you have the buyer. The buyer, so okay, you have to buy this house, and then you also transfer. But now instead of making that transfer money contract with him, he makes it with the other person, for that if you get the money from the seller, then I will go ahead and make this other transaction.
I don't understand
The specific example is not the one, but I'm trying to understand if the trying to go away from the two contracts, but the end result is that whatever those conditions are still met.
yeah, if you invent ways of buying and selling, as long as it's binding by the principles of the deen. But for example, what you mentioned, one of the very basic conditions there is that you have to draw a straight line between the buyer and the seller. You cannot have a third party unless it's someone would get a commission but I'm just saying, and that's what the issues of the banks and things like this. If you're not able to draw a straight line between the buyer and the seller, that means something is there, is not permissible. So it has to be presented. There's something here is, if you guys are okay, can I? If someone is already in a store that sells everything and can't control who comes to the store, since we live here in America and have our people shopping, should we try and sell the business or close it for loss? Wallahi, if you're having a business, it doesn't matter whether you're in America or elsewhere, it's only permissible for you to sell what is permissible. And it's not permissible to sell what is haram. And again, as we said, if you, for example, if you open a store for apples and fruits and stuff like that, mashallah, is good. If it's clothing, for example, if it's for men clothing, that's fine. And even with men clothing, is it showing the aura or not? It's a duty that you have to observe. If it's for women clothing, if it's for, if the ruling is always upon the norm, even the subject of makeup, for example, is it permissible for a Muslim woman to put makeup on? The answer is yes. To her husband at home, things like this. But you selling makeup, and mashallah, in a place where only the Muslimin are coming to you, or women that don't use makeup in the streets, mashallah, this is good. But if you know that the people are coming in and out and they're purchasing it and using it in the streets and things like this, then it's not permissible. So don't get into that business. And seek what is halal and what is rizq. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bless it for you. So it doesn't have to be that you have to close something completely if it's mixed. Just remove whatever is haram or whatever is used for haram. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless inshallah. The last question here is ما حل the security deposit في حال إيجار البيت ولا يجوز دفعه علما أنه غالبا ما يكون هناك عذر لصاحب المنزل لعدم إرجاعه. The issue of the security deposit when you rent a place, and this is used if some damage happens and things like this. But how can it be under what category there is? I don't recall exactly what. We have to define it first, but I have to check first, inshallah. No, I'm not. It's not coming into my mind now, inshallah. So we'll do that, inshallah, later, inshallah. Barakallahu feekum. Anything else? صلى الله وسلم وبارك على محمد وصحبه وسلم وسبحانك اللهم ربنا وبحمدك اشهد ان لا اله الا انت استغفرك واتوب اليك.